Welcome to the Jersey Barrier, where we love highways and we hate New Jersey. As always, I'm Jeremy, and today we're talking about Southbound US-35. This one's going to be a fun one. US-35 goes from roughly Michigan City, Indiana, in the greater Chicago area, to just west of Charleston, West Virginia. We start on I-94 in Michigan City, and we get our exit for 20 East and 35 South for LaPorte and South Bend. South Bend is for 20 and 35 South is for LaPorte. And at our split with 20 and 35, we do get 35 South LaPorte. Very good. We get our first mileage sign, and right away we get LaPorte 8 and Logansport 77 miles away, which is quite a swing. I don't think Logansport needs to be on there yet, especially since LaPorte is bigger and it's closer. You could really probably just put LaPorte as one line on the sign and it would be fine. And we get into downtown LaPorte. I've never actually been to LaPorte, and this is nicer than I would expect it to look. We get our mileage sign after LaPorte, and we get Kingsbury and Logansport. I think the secondary here should be Knox because of its county seat. It's about a few thousand people. Kingsbury is very small. It's not really significant at all. Kingsbury is about 200 people, so we could definitely have something else there. Now we meet US-6. US-6 is signed for Walkerton. I don't agree with that. We are signed for Knox, and so that is our secondary control. And 6 West is signed for Portage, which is pretty good. On our concurrency with Route 6, we do get Walkerton and Kendallville as 6's control cities. We don't get any mention of 35's control cities at all on this road. But we split off, and we will get Knox as the top line and Logansport as the bottom line. This is very well done by INDOT here. And this is on US 30, where we get Knox and LaPorte. Knox for southbound, LaPorte for northbound. On an exit like this, it should definitely be Logansport here. You should definitely be using the bottom line as the line for the exit, especially on a freeway. And we get into Knox, and in Knox we get our junction for North LaPorte and South Winnemac. Winnemac being our secondary control southbound, which is pretty good. Still in Knox here, we actually get a mileage sign right away for Winnemac on the top line, which is good, and Logansport on the bottom line. I actually think now that 35 is the fastest route to Kokomo, I think 35 should be signed South Kokomo on the bottom line, Logansport on a middle line, and Winnemac on the top line, because Kokomo is very large and it is significantly bigger than Logansport and a much bigger draw. And in Winnemac, we get Michigan City northbound, not even LaPorte northbound, but we get Logansport southbound. Secondary is perfectly fine. But now after Winnemac, we do get Royal Center and Logansport. We don't get Kokomo on the sign, which I don't agree with at all. I think it should be Logansport and Kokomo. And if you want to throw Royal Center at the top, you can, but it should definitely be Logansport and Kokomo for the bottom two lines. But after Royal Center, we do get Logansport and Kokomo as our two lines. This is very well done by INDOT right here. Now we meet US-24. We will be concurrent with it for a little bit, and it will be a freeway. And US-24 will be east for Fort Wayne, 35 south, of course, for Kokomo. And we reach our split with 24. 24 is signed left for Fort Wayne, and straight ahead is US-35 for Kokomo. That overhead sign ahead is also telling us that US-24 will be turning left and going east towards Fort Wayne. Now on our mileage sign after Logansport, we do get Kokomo and Indianapolis. 35 does not go to Indianapolis. 35 doesn't even really go close to Indianapolis, but US-31 does, which we will meet in Kokomo. But this mileage sign is a little bit off. If you were to take US-31 into Indianapolis, you would not be 50 miles further than Kokomo. It's probably closer to about 60-65 miles here if you were to take at least the fastest route to Indianapolis from this point. So I don't agree with this sign, and I think it should just be Kokomo. And you can sign for Indianapolis once you're on 31, but for right now, I don't think that's the right choice. And now we meet Kokomo. We get Kokomo downtown, keep right. That'll be our little exit, and we will continue straight ahead. We don't have a control city yet, though. And we actually don't have a control city southbound on 31 or 35 either. So that doesn't really seem right with me. But on the next interchange, we do get North 31 for South Bend, South 31 for Indianapolis. We are using 31's control cities entirely. We get our exit for 35 South now, 35 South for Gas City, and 22 signed for Kokomo. 35 for Gas City is alright. I would personally sign Greentown just because it's closer, and Gas City is almost a suburb of Marion, so we can hold off on that for now, and for now we can just sign Greentown because it's only a couple miles away. And when 35 goes back onto a 2-lane road, we get 35 South Reassurance Shield with begin Indiana 22. But Indiana 22 has been going for a long time, so I don't know why there's a begin there. There should not be a begin there. And now in Greentown, we get a concurrency with South 35, North 19, and East 22. So now we get a 3-way concurrency, which you don't see very often, but we don't get any control cities here, and we won't for a while. We actually don't get any mileage signs for the rest of Indiana. Now we pass Gas City, and we get to I-69, where US-35 will run concurrent for a little bit. So we will be using 69's controls, south for Indianapolis, and north for Fort Wayne, as you would expect. And the mileage sign, you get Indianapolis 70, Anderson 32. Anderson I don't agree with. I think it should be Muncie here, and this is what 35 should be signed for as well. But Muncie is not that far off of 69, so 69 could use Muncie as a secondary. Muncie is its own metro area, as well as home of Ball State University. And now we exit off. We get 35 South for Muncie and 28 for Alexandria. And now we meet our road that takes us to Muncie. It will shoot off of 35, but we will get Muncie 6 miles and Ball State University. And now we meet Indiana 3. It turns into an expressway soon after this, but we will be turning right towards Muncie, even though we kind of already passed where we'd get to Muncie. So I don't necessarily agree with this. At this point, I think it should actually be Dayton. Just go straight away and sign Dayton. This is the fastest route to Dayton, so sign Dayton from here. And on our junctions, we get Indianapolis, I believe for Indiana Route 3, or for, I think it's actually Indiana 67 goes to Indianapolis, and 3 north for Hartford City. So there's a 3-way concurrency here, but I think it should just be Dayton and I guess Marion northbound, but we'll talk about that on the northbound video. And we get our exit for 35 for Richmond and Muncie. Muncie is if you go westbound on whatever road this is, and 35 will be signed southbound for Richmond. Richmond should be the secondary here, but they treat it as the primary. We'll skip ahead to Richmond, where we will meet 70 East and 35 South for Dayton and Columbus. Columbus, I feel like, is a little bit of a stretch here, or a little bit presumptuous. Dayton is just fine on this sign alone. And now we get into Ohio, which has a really cool arch, and it says, Ohio, find it here. To insult this great arch with a terrible looking sign like that, come on, Ohio. And exit 1, we get 35 for Eaton, 35 East for Eaton. East? Oh. 35 does something a little bit different in Ohio. 35 goes eastbound in Ohio instead of southbound, because Ohio just likes being different. But now we get West Alexandria and Dayton on our sign. And Dayton is our bottom line, as it should be after Eaton. And we will be 35 East for Dayton. And we turn into a freeway now, and 35 East will be, when we meet 75, we will be signed east for Xenia. The only time a capital X should ever be on a sign is in the second letter of exit. Otherwise, it just looks weird and dumb. But here's a view of downtown Dayton. Looks pretty nice. I've driven through this part way too many times, but Dayton always looks nice. And here we are, our exit off for Xenia. So let's talk about Xenia for a second. Xenia is a county seat. It's about 25,000 people. It's fairly sizable, but it's a suburb of Dayton. I think what we should do is we should sign Beaver Creek. Beaver Creek is bigger. It's about 45,000 people. It's closer. And then after that, I believe it should just be signed straight for Charleston, West Virginia, because Charleston is significantly bigger. It's a state capital. It is 35 is a freeway for the rest of the length, or at least an expressway. So it's a standalone road. So it should just be 35 east for Charleston. And on our mileage sign, we get Bickett Road for 2 miles away, Jamestown, and then Washington CH, 31 miles away. I mean, they're not even spelling out the whole thing because it's not that useful. This is just ridiculous. And at I-71, we also get 35 for Washington CH. It's actually not a direct interchange here. It's almost like a Breezewood thing, but that's because 35 was kind of built after. And now immediately after 71, we get our mileage sign for Palmer Road 6 and Washington Courthouse 8. Washington Courthouse being treated like it's the last sign, or it's the last thing in Ohio, or ever on this road. You would think that the road ends in Washington Courthouse, but as you'll see on the next sign, nope, we have more to go. We have Chillicothe as 33 miles away and Washington CH as 2. Chillicothe is actually probably better than Washington CH or Washington Courthouse because Chillicothe is a US highway junction. But we get our next mileage sign on the next exit, and we get signed for Jackson and Charleston. So this is a little one-off. So they do acknowledge that Charleston exists, but they signed Jackson on there, and Jackson has been regressing a lot. I think it's like 7,000 people now. It's gotten a lot smaller. You could definitely put Chillicothe here, and then Charleston. That would be a great sign. Now we get into Chillicothe, and we get 35 east, 250 east for Jackson, which is weird because we would be on 50 on that split. And then 23 south, 250 west, Portsmouth, but also 250 west, Main Street, Chillicothe. 50 west is Main Street, Chillicothe, but we have 250 west on 23 as well. So this is terribly confusing. And also terrible control cities. 23 south for Portsmouth is fine, but having the 250 west there is terrible because it should just be 50 west, Main Street, Chillicothe. There should not be a 2 there. There shouldn't be a 2 anywhere on this sign. There should just be east 50 and 35 east for Charleston, or 35 south for Charleston as it should be. And now we split off with 35 and 50, 35 east for Jackson. Of course, have to be provincial. Even Gallipolis would be a little bit better here. I think that should be the secondary. And then if you wanted to put Jackson as the top line, you could. But, you could do 3 lines on a sign here. Always have Charleston on the bottom, though. And now we get Richmondale and Jackson, so we don't even get Gallipolis on the sign. So we really are getting to some small places. We got Jackson, very small, Richmondale, even smaller, but Richmondale is where the actual freeway section ends and it drops down to a 60 speed limit for a while. In Jackson, we get Jackson 1, Chillicothe 28, that's for westbound, and then eastbound we get Gallipolis 30. So considering that this is an exit, we are fine with Gallipolis here because it's a secondary, but we know that it's probably going to be the primary here, so I'm not a fan of that. And 30 miles away. Oh, look at this. The next mileage sign has Gallipolis at 31 miles away. So somehow we went towards Gallipolis and got further away. So Ohio is doing some weird math here. I don't know what's going on in Ohio. We did it. We have Charleston on the sign. Granted, there's only 7 miles left in Ohio. Gallipolis is the town on the border of Ohio, but it's somewhat substantial, so I'll give it a pass. But now we finally have Charleston, 61. Very good. And now we get our last exit in Ohio. So we get 35 for Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which is our secondary. That's what should be signed if you're going to sign a secondary or co-sign something with Charleston. And then Charleston WV. Boom, there's a welcome sign. Welcome to West Virginia, wild and wonderful. I love West Virginia's welcome sign. It's the best in the nation. And now we get our first pull through for 35 South Charleston, straight ahead. And on our mileage sign, we get Winfield on the top line, St. Albans on the second line, and Charleston on the bottom line. St. Albans is a suburb of Charleston. It's on 64. This is past the end of 35. But Winfield is a little bit off of 35. I think Winfield here should be the secondary, and then you can throw I-64 on here, or Buffalo, or some smaller town here. And then, obviously Charleston on the bottom line, but you don't really need St. Albans here. Next one, we have I-64, 29 miles away, and Winfield, 30. We lose Charleston, and this is terrible. Why are we losing Charleston? Winfield is, 5,000 people. I didn't even look up the population. It just wasn't worth it. It's not Charleston. Charleston is the state capital. We should know what the main game is here, and it should definitely be Charleston. So I don't know what's going on here. And at our junction with the old US-35, we get 2 I-64 as our control city. So this is not good either. Just put Charleston here, please. Well, and we get Charleston back on the sign. But all of a sudden, 64 is actually further away than Winfield. If you remember the last mileage sign, I-64 was closer than Winfield. Now it's further away. So West Virginia also doing some weird math here, but we have Charleston on the sign, so I don't really care. And we finally meet 64 with 35 ending here. We get 64 east for St. Albans and Charleston. Really should just be Charleston. St. Albans, it's not really that. It doesn't stand out as a suburb, so it should just be Charleston. Or it'd be funny if you put South Charleston and Charleston. And we take 64 just to see the downtown of Charleston. Looks actually pretty cool. You got the lake or the river. I actually don't know which. But I've driven it so many times. I see it all the time, and it's pretty cool. And that will end 35. And we'll finish it off with what was signed. I won't go through the whole thing, and you can feel free to pause it. Now, I'd fix this up a little bit, get a little bit more emphasis on secondaries. I would first sign LaPorte, just straight up LaPorte. I would sign Logansport, which is what they do. I would sign Knox as the secondary, and then after Knox, I would sign Logansport as the secondary to Kokomo, which would be the primary, and Winnemac as the top line, and then you can continue on until you get to Kokomo. Then from Kokomo, I'd sign for Greentown. After Greentown, I'd sign Gas City, and then Dayton. Once you pass Gas City, with Muncie as a secondary, and then I would sign Richmond as a secondary, and then it would just be Dayton. Then you would get onto 70, and you get off. Once you get off of 70 in Ohio, you would be signed for Eaton. Then you could sign for Dayton again, then for Beaver Creek, and Charleston is the final primary, and then you can use Washington Courthouse as a secondary, with Xenia as a top line. You can use Chillicothe as a secondary, Gallipolis as a secondary, Jackson you could put on the top line, Point Pleasant, Winfield, and I-64 as all of the secondaries there. And that's what I would do for US-35. I appreciate you guys joining me on this journey of US-35. Northbound will be coming very soon, so stay tuned for that. I appreciate you all. Have a good night. Peace out.